My name is Bayley Mifsud. I paint my Aboriginal artwork. It's a very ancient style, and there's a lot of history behind that dates back to 60,000 years. Traditionally, Aboriginal art was done in rocks and was a little bit less colourful. Not all Aboriginal people have the freedom to paint in whatever colours they would like. You need permission from and you need to be taught by your Aboriginal elders. My art is done on canvas, so it is a little bit different, and I paint with acrylic paint. The first piece I did was in COVID because I had so much free time, and I went to my local $2 shop and got a really cheap canvas, really cheap brushes. Over time it's definitely changed. The paints I've used have changed. It's always evolving, there's always a different paint to trial, different colour to trial. I have an idea in my mind, and if it's not that, then I don't love it. Because when I am creating something, I know the end vision, and if something slightly changes or two colours mix slightly different and it's not what I'd originally planned, I get a little bit too strict and a little bit too harsh, but more so to let go and just be creative and not care as much as if something's not exactly what you thought it would be. My favourite symbol would be the meeting place, and the reason being is because of how much it's evolved. So the meeting place symbol is circles around each other, which is in most of my artworks. And traditionally, yes, that was a waterhole or a campsite, which is why it looks like circles. But nowadays there's lots of places we meet people. So in the contemporary art world, I would do a meeting place to symbolise a house or a cafe, the MCG, anywhere you'd like to go. Go into schools, preschools to be able to teach Aboriginal artwork. Kids get really excited when I come in teaching them about Bunjil and Aboriginal culture. And it's most of the time really colourful and fun, and to see how passionate they are. My clients connect with my art because the story is about them. Throughout the process of commissioning an artwork, I ensure that I understand what the client would like it to represent and also the colours they would like it to be. If somebody's house is all blue, I don't want to paint them a pink piece. So I think it's important we workshop the story, style and colours together, because I think it's important that the client absolutely loves the piece as much as I do. Seminal are challenging the current art world by allowing artists to be given the rights that they deserve, their moral rights, their legal right, through licensing of artworks and giving the artists what they deserve. I am passionate, creative, inspired. My whole career or life as an artist has just happened organically through social media. Just from one piece that posted on Facebook, they just blown away. Super excited that my artist career, like my life's great, it's so flexible, it's so fun.